Hello everyone, it is your boy Winster, and I am back at it again with another video. I hope that you watching this video is having an amazing day, and as always, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. Shout out to my YouTube channel members as always. Shout out to Quick, shout out to Gabriel, Jared, Leo, Devin, Anthony, Staying Young, Wymie, and Thomas. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate you guys so much. For those wondering what you get when you become a channel member, you guys get access to early content on all full videos. You guys get a shout out on every single full video, and you guys can request games with me on Master Duel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, or I could just review your deck, or we could play test, or we could do whatever you want at a time that works best for both of us. If you guys want to support in a different way, you guys can, and you guys already are just by watching this video, but you guys can subscribe for absolutely free and get all this update on all these videos that will drop on my channel by turning on the notification bell. We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers. We are getting so close every single day. Thank you so much. Be sure to check out the description box. I have a very active Discord, TikTok, Twitter, and Discord. I am surprised that TikTok survived. I thought that thing was going to get Thanos snapped. But be sure to follow me on those platforms as well. Today, we're going to go ahead and break down the meta, the deck tier list post Supreme Darkness. Let's get right to it, guys. And here is our tier list. These are all the decks we're going to be talking about today, and I try to keep it at least meta relevant in my personal opinion. There are some decks that are just not worth talking about it, and we got some newcomers, so we're going to be talking about some new decks. On the left here, we got at the top, as always, the best in the game. These are the decks that are like going to be winning all the YCSs, going to be topping at every single event. Right underneath that, we got competitively viable decks. They're really, really strong, just not the best in the game. Right underneath that, we got solid. This is okay. It is a deck that you can play. It's not going to be able to compete with the other decks, but could get a entry in top 64. And then right underneath that, you could play this deck if you'd like. I don't think you should personally, but it's just not competitively viable. It's just the meta is not for it right now. And then right underneath that, we got stop it. Get some help. Don't play this deck. But let's get right to it. And starting us off, we have the Illusion cards. This is one of my favorite decks. I made a bunch of videos on this deck. It's just so much fun. But there are a couple of ways you could play it. You got Fiendsmith Chimera, we got Pure, we got Azamina. The cards are so fun to play, but I don't think this is the right meta for it. The reason being is there's so many Bystials running around, right? They're going to just remove your targets from the graveyard to be able to do anything. On top of that, there's so many hand traps, right? It's going to be so hard to resolve like a Gazelle or a Burflement or an Illusion Knight, let alone a Nightmare Apprentice. On top of that, this deck and its multiple variants loses so hard to like roll. Azamina Chimera is just it's gonna lose super hard. Not that this deck is bad, it's just this is not the right meta for it. And because of that, I definitely think that it's solid. It could sneak into like top 32, top 64, but I don't think it's really going to have really any outstanding moments in my personal opinion. Voice's voice. I definitely think this falls in the same category as the deck that we just talked about. It loses really hard to draw, and there's so many hand traps. On top of that, Bystials are never going to allow you to summon out the low from the graveyard. If it wasn't for the Bystials, then maybe, but it's just super hard to get her on the field successfully. And because of that, pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and put them in solid. The deck is good. It's just, this is not the right meta for it, in my personal opinion. Ritual Beast. I definitely think that the deck is pretty good. It has the ability to play under Shifter right now, so that's a huge advantage in this current meta because Malice is just running around, shifting on their own turn and just going into their full combo. However, I definitely think that the end board is a little bit to be desired. Yeah, it could end like on a one-sided draw with Thunder Dragon Colossus, but just as like the Chimera deck and the Voice's voice, I just don't think it has really any big standout moments, nor will it. The meta is just too heavy into the top right now, and I just don't think that there's a real place. Not that it can't top, it's just I don't really seeing it topping consistently, and because of that, I definitely think it's a solid deck, but just not any better than that. We got plants, Ragnaraika, Pure Ragnaraika. I definitely think that the deck is really strong. It is just absolutely insane on what the deck could end on. It could end on the big rank 4 monsters. It could end the rank 4 monster that bounces a card. It could end on Hyperion. It could end It's just so freaking good. But it loses to Droll super heavy. On top of that, the Molchonis are a big part of the format right now, or the meta. And I definitely think that this deck is not the right one to be playing because it special summons from the extra deck everything, right? It uses all 15 cards that you have. So I don't think it's the right place to be playing right now. I definitely think it's solid, but I would say it's on the lower end, in my personal opinion. Glad Beasts. Ah, man. The new support for it is pretty promising, and it has a lot of like players hype for it, especially the older players that played this deck back in the day. And I'm really excited for them too, right? Like getting new cards for your favorite archetype is just so good. But I don't really think that that new support is really going to take this deck anywhere. It may have the ability to, win you a locals, but I don't think it's really going to do much more than that, in my personal opinion. Dealing with Malice and banishing everything, and on top of that, we got the Raizio cards that are just super strong. I just don't think that you want to play this deck right now. So you can play it if you want, but I don't think it's a good idea. Melodious. I definitely think that this deck is a sleeper deck. I think it's really, really strong because so many people are hyper fixated on the Malice deck and the Raizio deck. I definitely think that people are forgetting how strong this deck can be and just have some crazy plays. However, it is a more technical deck and it takes a lot of skill to actually play it. And because of that, I think that's what holds it back. It's not simple like the top tiers, right? And that's what makes top tier. It's easy and it's strong. Where this is like strong but not easy. And because of that, it can hold it back. I definitely think it is a top tier deck, but maybe on the lower end because of the complexity. I definitely think Synchron is such in a weird place at the moment. I definitely think it's in between like low top tier to high mid tier. Because it doesn't outright lose to the biggest weakness, which is the Bystials, right? Because they can still bring back monsters that are banished with Oxyla, and they have a lot of protection when Oxyla is on the field. It protects the back row. The field spell protects itself as long as you have a Centurion card. It's okay. However, I definitely think that this deck relies a lot on playing on your opponent's turn. Yeah, you could like double Blazar, which is like absolutely insane. But I just don't know if it's worth playing right now. There are better decks to play. However, it's a lot of fun when you could splash this engine with a lot of other engines. You got Horus, you got Bystials, you got Azamina, you got White Forest. There's just so much you could do with the deck, and it's a lot of fun. But like I said, I definitely think it's at the bottom of top tier and the top of mid tier. So I would definitely put it at least the top of solid, so mid tier. Mitsurugi, a new archetype that just came out in Supreme Darkness and already is showing a lot of promise. And it's crazy to say that this is a TCG exclusive. It's working really well with Raizio right now, and it shows a lot of promise. A lot of people are already like topping with it, which is crazy. Supreme Darkness just came out this past weekend, or at least from the recording of this video. But because of how strong and a lot of potential it's having, I definitely think it's going to be one of the best in the game right now. Definitely one of the best in the game. I don't know about the best, but definitely one of the best. Kashtira. I definitely think Kashtira is a very, very powerful engine right now, especially since there's no real hits to the deck at the moment. Birth is at full power, Fenrir's at full power, Unicorn's at full power, Theosis, but no one's really playing this deck in its own engine. They're really mixing it with other things like the Fiendsmith. And when you mix two powerful engine like Fiendsmith, Chimera, it becomes a whole nother threat. And it's a very big control-based deck, and I'm such a fan of it. Now, does it have the ability to compete with the other top tiers like Raizio? It definitely can, because not a lot of decks could really deal with banishing face down. But it can't lose to a couple hand traps. I definitely think that this deck is the mid to higher end of top tier. I don't think it's one of the best in the game. I just think it's very powerful. So this is where I would personally put it on. Mermills had an explosion of support this past recent set with Rage of the Abyss, and a lot of people were looking at this deck to be one of the best. And it had a lot of potential because you have a lot of old school cards that don't have restrictions or that are like soft once per turns. So it's just absolutely insane. However, I definitely think the deck can struggle at points, especially with a meta that has Abyss Dweller, which is being spammed out by the Rizio engine. I don't think that this is the right deck to be playing at the moment. Not that it's bad, for the record. I definitely think that it is mid, but it's just the top tiers just really put it in its place. And it's crazy to even say that. I definitely think it's in the higher end of solid to maybe the lower end of top tier, but the meta isn't the best place for it. Goblin Bikers are looking pretty good, but just like everything else, man, in the current format, if you're not top tier, it's a bust. I definitely think that this deck has a lot of promise. It's looking really, really good. However, I definitely think it's going to be on the solid, maybe in the mid to the lower end. I think it's good, but I just don't think it could really keep up with like all these other decks. I know that doesn't look like Blue Eyes, but I assure you guys, that is actually Blue Eyes. The new support for the Primite deck is looking really, really good. It just adds so much consistency to it. The only thing that's missing here is the actual Blue Eyes deck, which is going to be released later on this week. So I'm super excited to see how the game is going to be played once that structure deck comes out. And everyone and their mamas right now are trying to get their hands on Lordy Lords. This is going to be one of the best decks in the format. I would definitely agree once the Blue Eyes stuff comes out. Every time when I speak about Snake Eyes, I'm like, why did they have to do us so hard? I could understand OSS getting banned, but like limiting Poplar and Ash to one, bro, I can't even go into other engines anymore. But I get it, you know, you had to waste like 4 hand traps to potentially stop the deck. Because if they were able to extend properly, they're just going to use your Ash that you used on them to continue to extend. With that being said, if you're playing Snake Eyes in this format, stop it. Get some help. Fire Kings is still a very competitively viable deck. It's just you can't abuse the Snake Eyes stuff anymore. So, with that being said, I definitely think that this deck could compete, but not at the caliber at once it was. So, I do think that at the moment it is probably in this area. It is like solid because it could end on some crazy board. You could end on the Crazy Exceed. You could have Kieran in hand. You could still use Princess. You could use Hita. There's so many cards that you can use. But the glaring weakness, as always, is going to be that island. And SP Little Knight, it's still very popular in this current format. And it could just banish it away. And you would just get demolished. So because of that, I would just put it in solid. It can compete to some caliber, but why? This deck just got some new support in Supreme Darkness with the new White Forest card. And of course, the White Forest cards are super freaking strong. I mean, there's not really much to say. It has the ability to set up an Omni Negate by like the 3rd or 2nd summon and set up some crazy interruptions. But because of like OSS, it's just not as strong as it used to be. It really fell down in the tier list. So because of that, I would definitely say that this deck is solid. It's a lot better of a sub-engine to work with the other decks, like with Illusion, what was Snake Eyes, or even like White Forest. I just don't think it's the right format for it. And Bestials and Droll, so many things going against it. Malice. This deck is one of the best in the game. I definitely think it's one of the best in the game. It's super strong. Has the ability to play one of the more powerful hand traps ever created with Shifter. And it is freaking annoying because it'll just OTK you. Now, the thing is that this deck could definitely OTK you in one turn. But if you have the right hand traps to stop them, I definitely think that it's really worth it. Lancia obviously jumping back into the meta. And it's been a while since that card has been in the meta. But it really just stops this deck entirely. If you're not able to banish anything, there's no way to actually play this deck. And on top of that, you got like the Melchummies and stuff to really stop this deck. Especially the new one, Mialos. It reminds me of Miados, but shout out to my Latino community. But yeah, easy, easy, easy. One of the best in the game. It is just absolutely crazy to me how none of these cards. Now I'm happy, but none of these cards came in a secret rare. The new spell is just absolutely insane. Just absolutely insane. And on top of that, they could play around one of the more popular hand traps right now with the Bystials just by dodging them. However, Abyss Dweller, it's a big thing right now, especially with the Raizio engine. But I definitely think that this is one of the sleeper decks in the meta. I definitely think it's Verge best in the game. Definitely top tier, in my personal opinion. It's a little bit complex. However, I definitely think it could keep up with the top tiers right now. There's not really much to say here, right? I definitely think this is the best deck in the format. You have so many ways to actually play it. You got Fiendsmith Raizio. You have Mitsurugi Raizio. You have Pure Raizio. All the engines that come along with it just make this deck one of the best game. Could play Abyss Dweller, which I'm shocked that it's not banned. Super, super freaking powerful. On top of that, it has a naturally built-in time card with Cowboy. Doesn't outright lose to Shifter because you could just still end on a board and then you could thrust your opponent and then set the Sanctum. That way you could summon out the Lancia, because the only deck that's really going to stop you is Shifter. But it's just absolutely insane what this deck could do. Super consistent, very, very strong. They get new support for it in this up-and-coming set, which might change things. I really doubt it in my personal opinion, but it's super strong. And boy, oh boy, I was happy. I was dancing when I heard all the hits that Tenpai got. They were down for the count, guys. They lost the quick play. They lost the field spell. They lost all that consistency on top of that Chandra. It was looking good. It was looking good for Raigeki Turbo. Tenpai's death. And then, of course, lo and behold, we have the Fiendsmith engine to come and save this deck. You use all your resources, all your hand traps, the Fiendsmith engine, and after everything is said and done, you have no more hand traps. Your opponent just normal summons Pydra and goes right into the battle phase. Oh my god, I hate it. That's super consistent. I love it. I love it. I love it. No, I don't. I'm lying, guys. But this is a top tier deck. Using all those resources or those baits, right, to go right into your main engine and OTK your opponent is just so freaking strong. And I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. This is a top tier deck for sure. I just don't know if it could really keep up with these other decks. I want to say yes, but at the same time, I want to say no. So I would put it in the top of this. And then this goes over here. I would definitely put the top of the top tier, and I would barely put it into maybe the best in the game. Some of my personal favorites, we have the Synchron deck. This deck, you could play it, but it's not going to be fun, man. It's not going to be fun. I'll tell you that. You're going to get Droll, you're going to get Nibiru, you're going to get Vader, you're going to get Ash, you're going to get Bystial. Every hand trap that can be played will be played against you if you play this deck. Do not play the Synchron deck. It's not worth it. You know what? Stop it. Get some help. I definitely think Memento is under everyone's radar because, like I said with some earlier decks, they're just super hyper-focused on Malice, on the Mitsurugi, on the Primite, on the Raizio. This deck just isn't seeing a lot of play because of that. Not that it's bad, because it doesn't lose to outright a hand trap. It doesn't lose to single Valor or Ash. It doesn't lose to single like Bystial, right? It can lose to like very impactful cards like Nib, Droll, the Melchummy, but then again, everyone loses to the right Melchummy. I think one of the bigger things to really take into consideration is that we have like a Bysteller in the game right now that's very, very powerful against the Memento deck. Now, I do think that this deck could still see a resurgence because it still works really well with the Fiendsmith stuff. So it still has a lot of promise. I definitely think it's like a top tier deck. It's just like under everyone's radar at the moment. One of the last decks we're going to be talking about today, I definitely think Labyrinth is still super strong, but Bystials are a big weakness for this deck because they'll just like banish like all the cards. from the graveyard. However, trap decks are really, really powerful. They have the ability to set like D barrier on the field and call Exceed, and then you won't be able to summon Exceed. It's just super, super strong in my personal opinion. Jerome Cannon just goes crazy. I definitely think that it's still something to play competitive. I think it's very, very solid. I just think it's potentially on the lower end right now. Still super good, but not like top tier. I would even maybe put it here. I'll put it right there. It's very, very solid, but just not quite top tier in my opinion. And there you guys have it. There is my tier list for after Supreme Darkness drops for Yu-Gi-Oh! 2025. I want to get your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. What do you guys think of my tier list? Is there anything that you changed, that you wouldn't? Let me know in the comments section below, especially if I missed anything. This is our community, guys. We built this together. I wouldn't be here almost to 5,000 subscribers if it wasn't for you. So I want to say thank you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe in the comment section. And before we head out of here, I am going to be at YCS Orlando, my first YCS like ever. So if you guys see me, be sure to say hi. Super chill. So if you see me, don't be scared to say something to me. But I will show you guys on the next one. My name is Winster. And of course, thank you so much for watching. You guys have a good day. Peace out, guys.